Mark Lippincott. How you doing this morning?
All good.
Welcome to Small Towns Unscripted. How you doing?
Good. I think you need like a catchy jingle now.
Yeah, right. I need a little
intro.
Well, I told you that I think we should probably copyright it. You couldn't do it, but we should have probably started this with the intro theme song to Dragnet.
Yeah, that'll be good. Scare the heck out of everybody.
Gotten into the names will be changed to protect the innocent. And maybe some of these things we might discuss.
Hector will have to work on that. A little dangerous zone we're entering. This is Nicole Turner. I'm Russ McClellan. You know, have you've watched a few of these podcasts?
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Yeah. What do you like most about them?
Just hearing people tell stories about, here and some of the things that so many of us took for granted. And it's just, but people that haven't been here, that amount of time really, they have no idea what it used to be like.
Do you feel like in most of my podcasts that we're doing here, we talk about the mission is to help unite people instead of polarize them. We get this local, not local thing a lot, and there's a lot of new people moving in. And I know a lot of people that have been moved here recently want to integrate, want to provide time and energy, especially if they're retired and they can volunteer. And they often feel like it's kind of hard to be a local, and even people that have been here 25 years are like, I don't know if I'm a local. It's like, what? I just kind of feel like that whole localism, and to me, is just people that are good people that are trying to help each other and live here, and I don't think there has to be this us against them.
Oh, there absolutely doesn't. The only thing that kind of grates me a little wrong in that is when they move here because they really want to have this small town charm and all of that. But then the first thing they want to do is change things to make it like where they came from. So sometimes that is a little bit of a put off, but I've become really close friends. Like we had people next door for many, many years. It was a second home, but we got to be real close friends, and I got to know, I knew their kids, and then I knew their grandkids, and they recently sold, decided that they couldn't really afford to maintain that many homes, but I've become friends with the new people, and they're great people, and they're new people to the area, and so it can absolutely work.
Yeah, and it's a small percentage of people that, like I've had a lot of clients turn into friends in 36 years of selling, and it's a small percentage that tend to be a problem, and I think we could say that about some of the people we all grew up with too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure there are people that are watching this going, that guy, that's the guy.
I'm sure they say it about me. That's all good though, tip the spear stuff. But anyway, let's go back, because I know you a little. I know of you a little. I know of your daughter, because our kids were about the same age. But let's go back in time to maybe your grandparents or even great-grandparents. How did they all get to here? What's that story?
So, I don't have all the details, but my grandfather, and this is on my mom's side. I never got to know my grandfather on my dad's side. He died when I was 3 days old. And so, that was sad, but I obviously got to know my grandmother on that side, on my dad's side, and that's one of the little stories that I think is fun and probably shouldn't be done anymore. But in fact, it was just right there. Do you remember when all those trailers were there? There was a whole bunch of...
On the fingers?
No, not on the fingers, just in the lot that's right beside the boat company. That used to be a trailer park.
Okay, yeah.
And not like seasonal people
just
lived there.
that flat lot, right?
Yeah, and so my grandmother lived there on my dad's side, and we were living, on the lake between the two bridges. Well, there's just one bridge there then, and Dad used to let me sit on his lap and drive the car to visit Grandma Soph.
Fun.
That's just one of those little things from way back, from grandparents. But so, and my dad's father and my dad and his three brothers were all in the Navy during World War II, and then in 1940, would have been 44 or 5, they cut my dad loose after his 4 years. I don't know that it was an official policy, but I don't think they wanted 4 brothers and their dad all serving in conflict at the same time.
Oh.
And Dad had a 4-year college football scholarship waiting at Washington State. Wow. And so he went on there and actually still has a couple of things in the record books there. He had an outstanding career there.
Right on.
And so, without going too far into athletics, but I think that college level athleticism skipped a generation. Kylie, our daughter, got to play college ball and stuff. And so Dad actually even played basketball and football at Washington State his freshman year. Wow. And then the football coach, the way I understood it, said, okay, that's enough of the basketball.
Back then you couldn't, that was really frowned upon. Oh, yeah. You might get hurt, of
exactly. Exactly. But anyway, so to back up a little bit, so, that's kind of what I know about that side of the family as far as back there. Then on my mom's side, my grandfather, her dad, he lived to be almost 102.
Nice.
And was just an incredible person. And so he and I were real close and did a lot of stuff together, as well as, my dad and I too. But he came out to Washington. I think he was born in Kentucky, then was in Illinois for a time, and when, into the Depression and all of that, he was born in 1912. And when he was when he was a teenager, basically I think he and his brother, I think the others got to stay. They left home not because of any kind of strife, but because literally there was not enough food to feed everybody.
Right.
I mean, he tells, we have, those of us that never grew up in those kind of times have no idea. No. He told stories to me about, and just matter of factly, he said, we would get one pair of shoes a year, and we would get them in the fall, because then you could usually get through the winter before the soles wore through. And he says, and then in the spring, we would cut out pieces of cardboard and put inside our shoe so that it would not be a barefoot on the ground.
Wow.
And so, that's just, so yeah, he moved out here as a teenager, got involved in agriculture eventually, and eventually had approximately 60 acres of apples and pears down in the Kashmir area. And
it's a pretty big farm back then.
Back then it was, yeah. Well, that's the other thing, that's changed so much. A family could make a living. His home place that he started on, I think, was just shy of 20 acres, and a family could get by.
Yeah, my dad raised 3 kids on 10 for a long time, and then he got another 8. But he raised 3 kids on 18 acres.
He was good at it. So he had the home place, as we called it. I spent a lot of time there. We can get into that a little bit too. It's fun place to be a kid. Spent a lot of summers there. Spent a couple of summers working most of the summer in the orchard with Grandpa. And we can get in a little bit of a dirt bike stuff down there, learning all that, and having the whole place to myself to ride around. Then he had a piece of orchard. If you remember where the old treetop building was, it's still there, but I don't know what's in it, if anything, now. And I just noticed the other day, now it's a mini storage between there and the river. Well, that was his. That was all orchard. And then he had a pear orchard up in the Dryden area.
Yeah, famous for pears up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and he was smart at it. I mean, he worked the orchard. It wasn't, he used to, I recall, tell me, he's like, see the neighbor over there? He's sitting inside drinking coffee and hiring all the work done. That's not how you make it. And so,
yeah, that was from dawn till dusk and then some.
Oh, absolutely. He told stories about, they were scraping to make it work when he and Grandma started that. And my grandma would be out in the orchard. In the old days, the original sprayers, it was just on a sled that they drug around behind an old cat. And, she would run the equipment at the sprayer and he'd be out with the hose,
One of the things I think it's cool from that era is the picking boxes were not bins. They were wooden boxes.
Yeah.
25 to a bin now.
Yeah. Did you ever go do that as a kid?
I never made them, but my mom remembers making boxes for something like 2 cents a box.
Right. A lot of guys in my era were like, I was 87, you were 80 when you graduated high school. You were 19,
80.
Yeah, and I was 87. So it kind of stopped right about the late 80s. But in the early 80s and the 70s and before, that was a job a lot of kids had.
Sure.
They just all make boxes every day.
Yeah.
I just remember turning them to kindling.
Oh, yeah.
In the fireplace. That was the fun thing with the hatchet. You just go to my basement and make kindling, try not to cut your leg off.
If you recall, and I don't even know if it's an operating shed anymore, but one of the first co-ops in Kashmir was called Kaskoa. And my grandpa and 3 or 4 other orchards down there were the ones that started that.
Wow. Sounds like an ambitious guy.
Oh, yeah, totally. And just always going. And he virtually never said an unkind word in his life.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool that all of our, our kids and their friends got to know him. And
I think there's something like common sense is not as common anymore. But back then, if you were unkind, there were some consequences. There wasn't this let's call the police stuff.
No.
There was this let's go behind the woodshed kind of stuff. And I think when you grow up with that mindset and you just develop, you're nicer because you're not going to be sitting here, throwing around idle threats, because back then people just wouldn't.
And you can't sit on the keyboard and say stupid stuff.
Yeah. None of that happens now, does it?
No, none at all.
The keyboard warriors.
But that was, so as a kid, spent a lot of time down there, got started on the motorcycle thing there.
Oh yeah, that's a rite of passage on an orchard.
So
right?
I still recall the first time I got on any kind of a 2-wheeled thing with a motor on it, and he'd gone down and rented, I think the gas station in Kashmir had a couple for rent. And it was just a little mini bike with a pull start, little Briggs and Stratton, and a little centrifugal clutch. But I was hooked. This is fine.
Yep.
And it wasn't long, and I don't remember how it all worked exactly, but Mom and Dad took me down to see Grandma and Grandpa at the orchard, and I was probably, I want to say maybe 8-ish. And Grandpa goes, "Hey, I need you to help me wash the car. Go open they had a little single car garage that they put the car in. And he says, go open the garage door and we're going to get the car out and we're going to wash the car." So okay. So I went and opened the garage door, and there's sitting a Honda Mini Trail 50. Oh yeah. Boy, do I wish I still had
Yeah,
that.
those are amazing. Those little brown ones with the...
This was the yellow and silver
yellow
one, and
one.
it has the little wheels about that big. I just literally rode the tires off
That's
that thing.
fun.
It would go, I swear you could ride it all day, every day for a week on a half a gallon of gas.
Right. Yeah. So then your mom and dad were they both raised here?
So my dad was born in a house in Mansfield in 1922.
Wow.
Mom was born in Leavenworth. They eventually met and were married. And after Dad had graduated from college and came back. And yeah.
Your mom's still going strong.
Mom is still going, 92. She just got her new hip. That slowed her down for a while.
She's racing now, probably.
But if anybody that's in town probably sees her, unless it's just really nasty weather, you'll see her walking every day. She's still absolutely loves it. It's her social connection. Still volunteers at the chamber.
Yeah, when you think about it, my grandma Daisy died at 101, but she was a go-getter all the way through. And when they keep busy, you always hear people when they get sedentary and they stop being involved, and they, even younger than that, when they retire, bad things tend to happen when you're not moving.
How many people do you know that worked, finally retired, maybe later than they really wanted to, but just needed to, that's the way it just needed to be. And it's not even a year and they had a stroke or they had a heart issue or, that's one of my little silly things I say, every time you don't do something is one more time you're not going to get to do it.
It's a good way to look at it.
You get one lap, and I'm going to try to finish with bald tires.
That's a great saying.
I know that feeling. I love it. Yeah, I can't imagine stopping doing stuff. And when you start doing what you're doing now, and can't wait to get into that with the fishing and taking over from Joe. That'll be fun. But what do you think? And you look at your childhood growing up here, and how would you describe it to someone that is maybe growing up here now and they were very curious about the differences between even when your kids grew up, how that is now, and how you grew up? What are some of the major differences in this town?
Just a lot more busy now and not near as much of the everybody takes care of everybody's kids kind of thing. I mean, I know there's still some of that, and I'm a little out of it now as far as knowing exactly what's going on with younger kids, because our kids now are 34 and 36, and as you know, when your kids are younger, you're really connected, with people, sports and school and all that. But the big thing is it's just so much busier now. I mean, as a kid, I was trying to remember exactly, and I don't know the exact penny amount, but 50 cents got you a lot at the Ruby Theater.
Right.
It got you into the movie. The Follettos ran the place back then. I forget, was it Aldo or Martin? Was his first name?
Can't remember.
Anyway, they were running the Ruby, and the wife took the money for the tickets, and I mean that was half a block from my house, because where we grew up was what now there's two bridges. It's Riverwalk Park, and there were homes there then.
Yeah.
And in the mid-'80s, when the dam had to be relicensed through FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they required them to spend so much money on some sort of a recreational project. So they made this thing, they called it Exhibit R. And they basically took everyone's home that were on the lake there between the bridges.
Faye Yetter had a home there, though.
So that was our neighbor. So
Yeah.
there's a connection there, because wasn't Faye, how was she related to Daisy?
Weren't
they related?
Yeah, Lawrence or Faye. Lawrence Yetter was her husband.
Yes, Larry.
Larry, yeah, and I think they were brother sister.
I thought it was Faye and your grandma.
Probably Daisy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, super, super nicest people. It was really hard on them then when we had to move. But my mom she was part-time in the real estate industry then, and she just happened to find two homes for sale next door to each other. They're a block up from Don Morse Park.
That's cool.
So they moved the neighborhood. And both of those homes still exist. So Faye and Larry's home, they moved it. It's just, in fact, if you looked out the window, you could see it. They moved it there, and then the home that I grew up in was moved, and it's up now. It's a rental. I haven't been up the street in a while, but it's at the bottom of what we used to call Suicide Hill, that sledding hill.
Yeah, I think Pat Kelly told
Pat
us
brought
about
that up. Yeah. But again, back to the child age here. Walk to the elementary school every day, and sometimes it would be a a circle kind of route, almost like the family circus thing, because my Uncle Leo, my dad's brother, for a time sold cars in what is now Tin Lily. He was selling cars there. And it really sort of kind of was just like Mayberry, because my Uncle George was the chief of police. And I would stop by sometimes and visit him at the jail. And that was until probably the late 60s. Little connection like with my fishing boat now. So I have a fish stick, a fish club in the boat. That used to be what he carried on his side when he was caught.
You wonder how many people got hit with that
Oh, I tell that to some of my customers fishing, and I'll say, this has probably bonked a few heads in transit.
Did he drill it out and put lead in the end of it?
No, it's just a stout piece of wood, and I can tell you because I flattened the end of my knuckle one day holding a big fish that I was going to clunk it on the head so a little kid could hold it up and it wouldn't be flopping for a photo. And that fish got me. The last thing it did was it made a big wiggle as I was swinging that club, and I squared myself right on the top of that knuckle. And that's the one when you make that silent cry and the tears are coming out of the corner of your mouth.
Yeah. Occupational hazard of fishing.
But I wish I would have. You give little kids really keepsake things and they're going to lose them.
Yeah, for sure.
Uncle George one time gave me one of the old big thick skeleton keys that opened one of the cells there.
Oh.
Because they actually used to have a couple of jail cells there. And it looked just like the ones on the Andy Griffith show.
Yeah, right. That's great.
In fact, so that's one of my close friends, growing up too, was Andy.
Andy Griffith?
And so he and I,
different Andy Griffith from the
different
show.
Andy
Yeah,
Griffith.
yeah. No,
But
I
we had
understand.
to
I know
watch
that.
Do you even know the Andy Griffith show?
Yes.
You do?
We had to watch the
Good
show
job.
every day.
Yeah, it was a great show.
But I still watch reruns.
What was the name of that sheriff, that funny guy?
Barney.
Barney
Fife.
Barney Fife.
Yeah, Don Knotts. Don Knotts.
That was great.
But yeah, it was Pat and I and Andy lived together. It was those guys, those were all 1 year older than me, and I was a freshman, so we lived together at Eastern my freshman year and their sophomore year. And then eventually Jeff Laporte, he was going to school at Spokane Falls or Spokane Community College, and he would come visit us on the weekends and do things. And eventually it was like Monday, Tuesday, Jeff's still here. And finally I said, hey, Pud, we used to call him Pud.
Pud.
I said, Pud, do you live here now? He goes, yeah, I guess so.
That couch has my name on it.
Yeah. But, back to the thing here. So, yeah, great place just to be a kid and wander around and, go out at daylight on the weekend and be home at dark kind of thing. I can still hear Pat Kelly's mom lean out the, front door about 5:30 p.m. or something and yell, Pat! Pat to come home for dinner time.
So he was
cute.
pretty young when his dad passed away, and you were close friends. Do you
We
remember?
were, actually, that would have been, well, pretty young, depending how you say that, but college age. We were probably in our early 20s.
Yeah, it was pretty
Yeah,
hard.
that was sad. I actually know 3 different friends whose dads had ladder accidents.
Really.
Wow.
When you think about you hear about those ladder accidents, not in the hardware store that happened to Pat's dad, but in the orchard. And a lot of people don't remember, but the orchard trees
They're huge.
were giant. I mean, you had to have, 14-foot ladders, and you're all the
And
way.
they were wood.
Yeah, and you pick 3 bins of tree, and it was crazy time, like 50 by 50 or 100 by 100 density apart. Now they're like 2 feet apart, 2 by 12. It's a very different
that
world.
was a whole different thing to farm.
I always thought it was interesting too when you think about the past, with no technology really, other than a phone on the wall, how fast you could get in trouble. Like what I never could quite. How did my dad know what he knew when you have to be in the house to get the call, and he's always outside, but he always knew. And I don't know if it's all the parents were just like, that was kind of spies for all the kids, what's your kid doing over there at this time? What's he, And,
You want to get in trouble even quicker, especially at school? Be a teacher's kid. So there were actually several in my class, and so in those days, I think they probably still do, but they had a teacher's break room. And this was the junior high school. That's where, what is it now? It's Chelan Fresh moved out of there, I think. That's where the community gym is. And then there was an older school that you probably never even saw.
Yeah, no.
That was junior high. So we called it junior high, not middle school. So we were 1 to 6 at Mo, and then 7 to 12 in the middle high school. And so, but yeah, my dad, I had him for junior high. And I should back up and for the school thing. So I went to the kindergarten out here, the old school.
Lakeside?
Lakeside. And I was pretty active as a child. And I think I was a little much for Mrs. Dietering, the teacher. And so I still giggle about this, and I think I learned more practical, common sense stuff from Mr. Burkhart, the janitor, than I did in the classroom, because I probably spent more time in the janitor's room or the hallway than I did in the classroom. And it got to the point where one day, my mom still loves to tell this story. She said she came to pick, and we had morning or afternoon. You were either AM or PM kindergarten. It wasn't all day.
Okay.
And Mom came to pick me up, and I'm standing beside Highway 97, beside the big tree in the front yard of the kindergarten, with a note pinned to my shirt that says, "Mark can't come back to kindergarten until his mom comes with him."
Oh boy.
Oh.
So I don't think that would fly today, probably.
Well, and there's probably hack boards hanging.
So
So-
you brought that up. So you know, I get these conversations too with a lot of you know, old classmates and older goats around here, and they say, like, you know, it probably would be a good idea if we did that again. But you know, that was just common.
Yeah.
And it's first day of 7th grade. We've moved to the big school. I have my dad for the first class of the first day of 7th grade. It's math class, junior high math class. And first bell rings and everybody's giggly, and you know, we're 7th graders and we're all excited. And second bell rings, which means it's time to be in your seat and be quiet. And so it gets quiet in the room and everybody's looking up front, and my dad says, "Mark," he says, "come on up here." And I think, oh cool, it's my dad. I get to do something really special here. And I get up to the front by his desk, and he pulls the drawer open, and I'm like, I know what's in that drawer.
The evil drawer.
That's a not good drawer.
And out comes the hack board, and he says, "Go ahead and grab a hold of the drawer there." And he just gives, I mean, it's just a little tap like that. And everybody in the classroom was like, and all he said was, "Just wanted to get that straight, and there's not going to be any favoritism in this class. Go have a seat." Done. Took care of it in the first 30 seconds.
You're scared to death, I bet.
I didn't, I mean, you know, yes and no. But we played a game in that involving that kids still laugh. I was just laughing about that with Jim Beeson the other day, online, of course. And he played a game called Bump.
Yeah,
Now, I don't know if he invented
game?
it, but he played it often, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. And what it was as you counted you all the way around the room, up and down the rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anything that was ended in 7 or was a multiple of the number 7, it made you think and it made you learn numbers. You had to say bump instead of the number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bump.
Okay.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, bump. 15, 16, bump. Well, if you messed up, you got to come to the front of the class and get a little tap.
Oh.
And it wasn't a send you to the moon, make you cry thing. It was just...
I think they used it as leverage, like that fear component was real in elementary school for me, because I think I had Sherm Young was our principal, and I'd always be the one tasked to be at the front of the line. All my buddies would all get in trouble, and then my friends would put me at the front of it. Now, talk your way out of it. Talk your way out of it. And it had to be hilarious to them in hindsight. You know, as a kid, you're like, how do I sell this guy not giving us all hacks? And that's a lot of responsibility as a 4th grader. You know?
There's a little, I'm not going to use a name on this one. I'd love to, but I won't do it to him. One of my classmates, and he was kind of and this will kind of give it away to some of my classmates, kind of an inside joke, but he was kind of the Vinnie Barbarino of our class. He was pretty cool. And what Dad would do is, so everyone would, like, they'd count ahead so that you wouldn't choke. It's like, okay, so I'm going to be 18, I'm good. Well, he would just randomly go and point to someone else once everyone was doing that. And, you know, sometimes people would just, So this individual, still a friend of mine, lives here in town, he did that, and Dad says, well, you know, and of course he messed up, and Dad says, we'll come up to the front of the class, and he says, I'm not doing it. Dad says, well, actually you are. And he says, no, I'm not doing it. He says, well, your choice is to do that like everybody else, or you could just go down to the principal's office. And so he slowly, scared to death, made his way to the front of the class, and Dad had this big grin, and, you know, I'm not getting anybody in trouble with this, but Dad had this big grin on his face, and this guy turns around and grabs the desk, and all Dad did was take the hackboard and slap the top of the desk. Didn't even touch him, and he screamed and jumped in the air.
Oh.
Fear is a real thing.
Anyway.
Fear is worse than the actual punishment.
Maybe I shouldn't have told that one.
No, that's a fun.
I still think
That's all great. You know.
No, that's hilarious, but it's true though.
You know, it's fun. I can every now and then on that, I think one of those local Facebook pages, Old Schoolers page or something, someone will post something that involves a photo of the old junior high building. I mean, I can still close my eyes and walk down those halls and see the classrooms and see the teachers that were there. We still have a few of them around, but we've lost a lot of them.
That's well, I'm hoping this podcast we can get some of those authentic stories before they're gone, and it's fun. We have, it's fun. We're trying to get a few people that are pushing 100 right now to, get the energy to come on, and and a lot of those, that's a big step for people to get on a podcast when they've never done it. But
and it's sad too. Some of those people, maybe they're still around, but maybe there's a dementia issue, and the stories are gone now.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of that. People are like, that's not what happened. I'm like, okay, well, that's what he did happen. It's all good.
Sure.
Stories are stories. They're all good.
A high school funny one. So we had Gene Peterson, wonderful, wonderful teacher for high school algebra, biology, chemistry, and so I'm gonna throw Bob under the bus for the first time today.
This is just number one.
And so we're in biology, and of course we were super good friends and been literally been hunting and fishing together since we were in kindergarten.
Wow.
And
that's great.
And still are. And we're in biology, and so we're gonna dissect frogs. And so we had these little lab stations, in the biology room. And so Bob and I've got our frog, and we're like, well, we're hunting guys. We've been field dressing, whatever you want to call it, animals and birds and stuff. And we figured, well, if we're supposed to deal with this frog, we probably ought to get the guts out of it. And so we made the incision and cleaned it all out and had it all nice and clean. And Mrs. Peterson comes by and she looks at us and she just shakes her head. She goes, you're just going to have to deal with that. And so, because what we were supposed to be doing was obviously dissecting organ by organ and looking and learning about the parts. You just pulled it all out. And, but without going too far into that, and I ended up having her again, for other classes, and I really enjoyed her as a teacher. She was firm, and eventually Bob and I were made to sit at opposite ends of a row because there was always something going on.
Sure. And
like maybe we had these styrofoam balls that we would make models of atoms. So you'd have your your nucleus and your protons and neutrons and all this, and there were styrofoam balls, and there was a heater in the back of the room that had a squirrel cage fan in it. And somehow, I don't know, I heard stories of this, that some of those styrofoam balls ended up in the heater, and when the heater kicked on, it made it snow.
Oh, funny.
And she just looked at both of us.
Somehow. You guys.
So we got to clean it up. I mean, we weren't doing destructive stuff.
No, that's
just
fun.
Just goofy, fun stuff. But anyway, I had her for chemistry and enjoyed it. And I don't know, it was something I enjoyed. And the academics came pretty easily for me. I mean, I had to study and stuff, but I got it. And eventually I ended up over at Eastern. I went back my second year, winter quarter, and I took a chemistry class that I needed to have for an applied science degree that I was going to be working towards. And I enjoyed it. We did these giant molecular problems and things, and it just clicked for me.
Right.
And finals came, and I had the division chairman as the prof, which usually means it's going to be a tough one. And I felt like I did pretty good on his final, and he's handing out the finals, and just people are just filing by. And then he stops and he reads my name and he says, come up here. And I'm like, uh-oh, this is probably not good. And he says, I want to shake your hand. He says, I've never given a 4.0 on a final in my class. He goes, you aced my final. You had a perfect score. I've never had that.
Wow, that's cool.
And I remember telling that story to Gene Peterson, and she just beamed. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And he says, you must have had one hell of a high school chemistry teacher.
Yeah, that's the thing about the education system now, and I'm not a teacher, so I can be only so hypocritical, but it seems like the rules of engagement have changed so much that it's disenfranchised teachers to a level where that ability to really care. I mean, there's a lot of great teachers out there that are doing their absolute best, but it just seems like from the outside looking in, the rules have changed so much in favor of all the rights of the students. But you think about it before, it almost is counterproductive, because back then, like you're saying about Peterson, they cared about you.
Totally.
I mean, they were like parents to you in a way, but they weren't parenting you. They were guiding you,
yes.
But they loved you. And I think that it's kind of sad to think that we've had taken those opportunities for teachers to kind of care that much. It's more of a business now. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it just feels like that.
Oh, I still, having grown up as a teacher's kid and lots of teachers' friends, and some of them that are now still, most of them are retired now, but they're handcuffed so much with what they can say and do, and understandably so. My dad, he subbed for several years after he retired, and that was kind of, so that would have been late 80s-ish, and he would bring up some of these things. Of course, they took his hack. He's like, "Oh, it's a sad day. They took my hack away." But
That's funny.
Something would come up, and he'd say, "Well, you can't do this, or you can't do that," or like, "Well, we're going to sue you," and he'd just say, "Take a number and get in line."
Yeah.
But I think we need to advocate more for the teachers than we do the students now. There's some, and granted, there's kids that have some special considerations that it's going to be a little different situation for sure, but it's not. I think old school was good school.
Yeah, me too. And I also think this. There's some legitimate ADHD issues now. I probably always have had that. Me too. Like, I still have it, I think. But it's funny how the diagnosis of that is so rapid in some cases.
Yeah.
And that, and hey, in some cases medicine really works. But when it's a blanket default, oh, you're a hyperactive kid in a classroom. Well, isn't that probably a good thing in a way? I mean, what do you think kids are going to be when they're put in a classroom at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old when they really have so much energy? It's crazy. And it's not an easy problem, but it just seems like we were hyper and somehow they managed to control us. But
those are, so that's a little bit of a funny story. Mom likes to tell it too. So old Dr. Wom, actually we're bouncing around time frame, but he was, the family physician. He delivered me.
Dr.
And
Wom.
that's Dr. Manly Wom.
Huh.
And that's actually a fun story I tell when I'm up lake with people fishing. There's a campground named after him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's right there, just a ways above Donkey Falls.
Nice.
And actually, it's actually real close to Bridalveil Falls is where it is. But that has completely changed. But Mom, anyway, with the hyperactive thing, one day, this is the way she tells it anyway, and she took me in to see Dr. Wom. I was probably either getting stitches put in my head or taken out. And she says, medication, him or me, but somebody's getting it.
Oh.
Him or me. I'll take it. Whiskey. I'll take that right now. That's funny.
Yeah, but no, I had a fair number of concussions from I think I was the original Super Dave Osborne.
Right.
There was a period of time in grade school, and I still get teased by some of my friends to this day, and it's fine. I laugh along with them, but they'll look at me like, "Hey, helmet boy." I had to wear a helmet at recess on the playground because I'd had so many concussions at a young age.
That's so funny.
Monkey bars were your enemy.
Well, the playground at Mo was asphalt.
That's funny.
Oh yeah, so you're just prone to breaking something.
Yeah, and without going into too many of the head injury stories, one of the ones that, and I still remember this when I was little. I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. Little boys, I don't know if they still do, but little boys then pounded nails into wood with hammers. Mm-hmm. That was one of the fun things that you did. Yeah. And it was usually the hammer was much too big for you to really handle very well. And I think the hammer still is sitting in the garage at my mom's house. So there was a straight claw hammer, and I'm, of course, probably with a 16-penny nail that when you're that little feels like a railroad spike, and I'm tap, 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 and I'm not really making any progress. And I thought, well, if I got two hands on that and really got a big swing, I could drive this nail. So, clunk. And it was stuck. I let go. The hammer is sticking out of my head.
Wow.
Oh.
And I walked from the garage around to the front door. And
do you know how heavy that hammer probably is too?
And this was one of the ones that actually staggered Mom a little bit, I think. And
she got a hammer in your head.
And I came to the front door with a hammer impaled in my head.
Oh my God.
And I don't know if it fell out or I pulled it out or she pulled it out, but then with a head injury like that, blood with your heartbeat shoots 6-8 inches out of your head. And so that one got her a little bit. So that was one of the leading to the helmet stories.
That's funny.
I feel like I want her to almost tell that story.
Or the bicycle. So another one that got me. So without going into all the injuries, so they should have never bought me a speedometer for the bicycle. That was a big mistake at a very young age.
You're like, now I got to go as fast as I possibly can on
you
every.
have to see how fast you can go. Mm-hmm. And so
down
it was an
hill.
old pedal bike, one-speed, coaster brake kind of thing. And so I took that bicycle up towards the Saddle Club, up, was that Bradley Street? I think it is. Mm-hmm. And so you know how all those hills are. And went about as far as I felt that it was safe, which it obviously was not. And was coming down that hill and occasionally glancing at the speedometer. When I got right on that last hill by the community gym, is what we would call it now, I think there was a pothole. And I looked down at the speedometer, and I swear it hit 40. And I launched through the handlebars and skipped down the road. And major road rash and just, gravel embedded in me everywhere. And I think, and Mom could probably tell the story better, and maybe they'll see this story, but I'm pretty sure Jim Talley was either outside or was in the gym, maybe doing some sort of a practice, and I had enough wherewithal to find him. There was a lot of blood running out of me. I was leaking a lot, and found him, and I think he took me to the hospital, and then they called Mom, but she says I was there for most of the afternoon getting gravel picked out of me. But so yeah, speedometers on bicycles was bad.
So when you were let's fast forward a little bit. When you were in college, you're in this. Did you know that you would end up being in a dental lab? Is that when did that?
I didn't know really what I wanted to do as a freshman, and just took some general classes. But I'd always enjoyed building things with my hands, and I actually got a little bit of guidance from Tom Millette, and he, in fact, at one time I briefly thought about going to dental school, and then I think academically I could have gotten through that, but then I was like 7 more years of school. And then he says, well, why don't you consider the lab, the lab side of things? And so I looked into it, and there was a program over at Seattle Central Community College, and I don't think the program even exists anymore. And the whole industry has changed a lot. But I looked into it, it's like, this looks pretty interesting. But the class, it was already full for the year, and it was a 2-year program plus summer school. And if you didn't transfer anything, it was a 4-year program squeezed into 2. If you didn't transfer anything into it, you had to take 20 to 25 credits a quarter, 7 in a row. And that was a lot. So I went back to Eastern my second year, just winter quarter. It was just Andy and I lived together. And I think I took that chemistry class I mentioned, and a business law class, and I think a psychology class. Just some things that were going to transfer so that I could focus more on the dental side of the thing at the lab school.
And you've been doing that since 85?
85. Yeah, I started in March of 1985, and it almost ended in May of 85. Had a bad motorcycle accident on Memorial Day, and 100% the car's fault, but that slowed me down for a little while. And
yeah, I saw your email. Their fault, but bike's loose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm writing down that it was in the sad part is too. There was a gal in the back of the bike with me too, and my sister and brother-in-law were on another motorcycle. We were just out on. So we had come to Chelan to compress it down a lot. We had come to Chelan for Memorial Day. And we'd gone water skiing in the morning. I still remember the day. We'd gone water skiing in the morning, and then after I had gotten a motorcycle, my brother-in-law, against my sister's better judgment, he got one too because he loved it. And so we had taken just a scenic ride to Washington Pass up above Winthrop, and it was late afternoon. We stopped, got fuel. We ate ice cream in Winthrop. We're minding our own business, riding responsibly down the Methow, and they're just above Black Canyon. I still recall, and there was a van between us that had been doing like way slower than the speed limit. And I'd gone around the van, and they were just right behind me, and then my sister and brother-in-law behind them. And I'm banking, as you know, if you ride a motorcycle, to the right around the corner, and I can still see a car pulled out of a private driveway from an orchard. And I swear the gal looked right at me, and when I was here to there doing 40 some miles an hour-ish, pulled out right in front of me. And it was just immediately. And it was a sudden stop. But the problem was, if I had tried to go left, I would have flown off the highway into the Methow River that was basically at flood stage, plus oncoming traffic on Memorial Day. If I had tried to bank hard or right, I was going to be into the gravel and slide under the car, so I just clamped the brakes up and started to lay the light down a little bit. But we impacted pretty good. And between the two of us, I think we broke 6 out of our 8 arms and legs, 4 compression spinal fractures, 3 pelvic fractures. Wow. My big toe was on backwards inside my boot. Almost got my right arm torn off.
So do you remember, like sometimes when that happens, you go to shock and then you kind of forget how you felt, or were you awake? Or
I was still, my brother-in-law, and sister too, both, hustled right up there and tried to keep us, and we're laying in the middle of the road trying to keep us from getting run over and finishing us off. And I recall being conscious, but I'm sure starting to get shocky. And I recall, you're laying on the ground, so you tend to roll on your side and push off the arm to stand up. And I remember thinking, I'm fine. And I remember pushing off my right arm, and it crumpled. And I remember looking at my right arm and going, I've got 3 elbows that's probably not right.
How you doing?
And
Hammered
my-
in the head,
and
elbows
my
on backwards.
My brother-in-law, and I'm just scratching the surface on this. So,
Yeah.
and my brother-in-law says, you need to stay on the ground. And I do recall him telling me later that some guy came walking up, impatient that we're blocking the highway. There's fuel everywhere, and he's smoking.
Of course, yeah.
I think my brother-in-law almost beat him to death. And there's no cell phones in those days. And so he had to jump back on his bike and ride down the highway to the first house, try to make a phone call. And an ambulance came from Brewster, took us there first. And I think they kind of went, whoa, this is way too much for us. I think they put sutures in my chin. My mandible was sticking out because I stuck my... So fortunately, we were both wearing really high-quality full-coverage helmets, or we would have for sure.
You had leathers on, or were you?
No, I was wearing a football jersey. And
Ouch.
yeah. And
Well, lucky you both lived.
we were, yeah. Then they hauled us from there to Wenatchee, and I was in intensive care for a few days. The poor gal, she was the one with the compression fractures in her spine and the pelvic fractures. She ended up in a body cast for the summer.
Ugh.
I crawled around on a gym scooter because both my right arm was all messed up, and they put a titanium plate and bolts in it to hold my elbow to my shoulder for a year. But I couldn't use crutches, and both my feet were broken.
What do you do?
Yeah, anyway. But we came out of it, and she and I still keep in a little bit of contact.
Yeah, that's
It
bonding.
was before Shelley and I had met.
Bonding experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through titanium.
Jeez.
Yeah, and so when did you, speaking of Shelley, when did you meet your wife of 37 plus?
Yeah, it'll be 38 years this year that she's put up with me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks, dear. So the way I tell the story slightly differently than she does, she usually gets a grin and goes, that's not exactly how it happened.
It's like, well, you're a fisherman. It's a fishing story. It gets a little.
Usually most spouses.
That's actually ties into the wedding ceremony a little bit too. But she was a brand new, cute, beautiful little hygienist right out of hygiene school in one of my account's offices. And this would have been, let's see, it would have been 86, it would have been fall of 86. And this is the way I tell the story. I walked in one day and we met, and I think the next time I came in to deliver some work there, she said, I just had a cancellation. Would you like to get your teeth cleaned today? And I thought, sounds like a good idea to me. And the next thing I knew, I had clean teeth, a wife, 2 kids, a house, and a dog.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah, she got you on the, want your teeth
So
cleaned?
she again, might try to correct that
That's
story.
cute. And that was in Vancouver?
That was in Vancouver, yeah, because I had started the business down there. And so I had graduated from lab school. I was working part-time in a lab in Redmond, but I did not fit well in Seattle greater area. But I mean, it was where the lab school was, and I got a part-time job at a lab, though, which was really good. I got some great instruction there. It was a small, real high-quality place, and I was lucky to get that. But they just didn't have enough work after I graduated to keep me full-time forever. And I really didn't want to work for someone. My whole goal was to someday own my own lab. I was lucky it happened quicker than I had planned.
Yeah.
And so I ended up in Vancouver because I had a sister and brother-in-law there. And then fishing, I was down there a lot because my good pal Bob had just started working at G. Loomis for his uncle. And so I was down there all the time anyway. I thought, well, this is probably as good a place as any to start. And so that's how that started.
So did she grow up there, or how did she get there?
So yeah, wife Shelley grew up there. She was originally from Iowa. And that ended up being kind of a funny story. We ended up having, after we moved to Chelan and built our home, and that was in '95, we ended up having some of her relatives from back in the Midwest come to visit that had never been to Washington and hadn't really been out of Iowa, I don't think, a lot, in Kansas. And I recall one of them saying to her, you're really lucky you got out of Ohio or Iowa and Kansas. They were joking, but
Mountains.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going back to Kentucky for just a week, and it was just enough. Even a week was enough time to realize when you get coming back over the pass, you're like, man, those are some big mountains.
Yeah.
Well, as a little kid, we went one time to Illinois because, again, relatives from my mom's parents' side of the family, and we went and visited people there. We went to the pig farm, the soybean farm, and all that kind of thing. And I recall thinking, even then, it was in first grade. It was the first time I ever flew on a commercial airliner, and I thought, if you stand on a fence post, you're probably the tallest thing in the county. And it was true.
Wow.
So,
I looked
that's the other thing, we talked about how busy it's gotten here. Well, it's no wonder. Look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes to that inevitability thing, where we talk about change. And I'd love to get your perspective on the change, because one of the things I try to explain to people in my career, in my lifetime, everything I've seen that has been changed is messy at the time. Whether it's talking about Riverwalk Park, at the time, that was very messy for a lot of people. And now people that come here look at the park, it's beautiful, it's, you know, it's used a lot. But at the time, it was very messy, whether, you know, Walmart coming in, Judy Jane leaving, you know, all the things that have changed.
This path right out here?
This path right out here, the next path they're talking about. I mean, everything, the past is always messy, always has been messy. That's part of the program where you get through that and hopefully you end up with something better. But nothing's going to please everybody all the time.
No.
And I've always just said if growth is inevitable because of where we live, unless we put tanks at the tunnel and start, you know, military stopping people.
I always thought we needed a gate at Pat and Mike's that swings shut at a certain point and says Chelan's full, come back another time, send a check.
There you go. Send a check.
Just send a check.
Get on the list. Yeah, in a military. But therefore, I just tell people, instead of being reactionary at the end of something, maybe get involved at the beginning of something, you know, zoning or traffic studies. And then you're like, well, why would anybody want to do that if they're, you know, chasing kids or they're busy in their daily lives? You don't really notice it till it happens to you. And I see that in my business with property rights.
Sure.
It's getting to where I call them property privileges because they tend to be a right until they decide not to let you do what you want. And whether that's a lead arsenic issue for an orchardist, which is also another funny thing. I think about all the chemicals that have been taken away and then they dilute them and sell them back to you. And now you got to spray 6 times as much. And then you look at like your grandfather, they lived to be 102. I mean, they swam in the stuff that.
He used that lead arsenic for, I recall some of the sprays that he used, I think one was called Moristan and some other stuff, and they had no protective gear. Yep. His protective gear was a long sleeve cotton shirt.
Yeah, paraquat. You know,
and he would come back in though, and if it was a sunny day, I mean, it looked like he'd been sunburned, but it was a reaction, you know, I'm sure. In fact, even I rode this, I used to love, I don't know what it was, I loved riding the tractor, and especially if the speed sprayer was on back with Grandpa. And I would beg as a little guy, and Grandma would take me out and put him in his lap, and then she would just stand there because he would only make one row, and then I'd be asleep. I mean, I was 3 years old. And then she'd take me back in the house.
I tell my dad used to, as like a teenager, would be a flagger for the planes back in the day where they sprayed the orchards with their,
yeah.
So he would just be a flagger and they'd just douse him. And would you wear like masks? And you know, no. He lived to be 86. You know,
that would have probably been AK Platt doing the spring.
Probably, yeah.
So he passed away, and his widow ended up marrying my Uncle Leo. And the house, it's one of the last ones. You'll know the house if you're headed out South Shore before you get to Pat and Mike's, and there's that little private road that goes down about a couple hundred yards. There's one little old flat roofed house left there. That was it.
Do you remember Ernie Gibson?
Oh, absolutely. I flew with Ernie a couple times.
My dad used to tell stories to go to Stehekin with him. He'd fall asleep. And then
people always said that. I don't know if it was true or not.
Or if he just rested.
Or if that's what he told everybody to keep telling everybody. You know, like that's the rumor he started himself.
Well, as a guide now, you could probably appreciate. He probably didn't want to talk to anybody, so he just pretended he was asleep.
Oh, I'm a chatterbox on the boat all the time. Yeah. In fact, I always warn people, you know, there's a point at which if I'm telling you too much, just tell me to be quiet.
I think you're great. We went on, my wife and I, Audie, went up Lakewood.
That was fun.
I think, you know, that's, for me, that's the best time is fishing, you know, casting into those rivers.
Oh, absolutely.
Up lake. There's nothing quite like that. And I know Joe, you know, you probably watched because you took over, maybe we just get into that. You took over Joe Heinlen's Lake Chelan Adventures.
Yep. He and I had been working together for 8 years already.
Right.
And then, he figured out a way to retire and skedaddled out of here. This wasn't home for him. I mean,
he's excited.
Nothing against it, but I mean, his home is Southwest Washington, and he's we chat daily.
Yeah.
You know, so he's out winter run steelhead fishing probably today again.
Yeah. So what do you think so far? Is it business as usual now that you got the whole thing yourself?
It's interesting. I mean, I'm already booking things clear into August and September, but you know, there's still lots. I have a lot of openings, and there's going to be people that they fished with Joe for so many years. Like you talked about change, they really have a hard time changing. And I've had a couple of those old, long-time customers of his that were kind of hesitant, and then I'll just flat out, I'll say, be honest. You know, after we're done with a day or 2 days or whatever, I said, so how did it go? They go, you work out just fine. This is just, we were just a little hesitant because we fished with Joe 9 times, but there'll probably be some that are like, no, we're just not going to do it anymore.
Are you excited about that whole?
Absolutely. And it's, you know, I'm a little late in the game maybe starting that, but I feel like I have a lot of years left in me.
Heck yeah.
I have I have a close friend he's almost 15 years older, and he's a retired guide, and I got some advice too from him and things. And one of the first things he said to me, he says, "I always knew you'd be good at that."
Oh, that's
He goes,
cool.
"You just started too late." But that gets into a whole nother. Like, I made these notes. We don't hardly need any of them, but
No, I love them. Tell us
but,
whatever. It's good.
Well, we'll be here until tomorrow if we get to. But this guy I'm talking about, Lenny, I got to fish with him a whole bunch of times down in the Florida Keys, and what an amazing experience! It's so completely different than here. Warm water, saltwater fishing is, except for the lake, is probably one of the most fun things I've done fishing wise.
I think Joe was talking about he was maybe going to go do that somewhere.
So and I took Joe down there once. Joe and Rick Hansen with me, another longtime great friend, classmate. We went down there and fished with my buddy Lenny, and had a great time. And so they got to experience that. But Joe's thing was he and his wife did a vacation. I don't know if they did it more than once, but they went to that little island. Is it called Majerus?
I don't know. Mexico.
Mexico,
Yeah.
on the Gulf side, and he fished a couple of days or whatever there, and immediately just thought this was the neatest thing in the world, and had an idea that maybe they might move there, and he'd go to work for a guide, and he was all fired up about it. Joe can get fired up, and which is a good thing.
Yeah, 100%.
And but he and I talked about it. And I even talked to my friend Lenny about it, and he goes, "You better talk to your buddy about that. He's going to be, in a 6-boat fleet, and he's going to be the last one to get booked every day." And it, going down and starting that as a business from scratch, even though you're working for someone with no previous clients, that's going to be a tough go. And it's kind of like me going to the Keys. It's a fun place to visit, but I don't want to live there.
Right. Do you do most of the fishing? Is it Mackinac driven, or?
Yeah. So I mean that's what we catch most of in the lower lake as far as the trolling, the deep water trolling thing. Yeah, Mackinac, aka lake trout, which is a misnomer calling them trout because they're actually a char species. But yeah, we've got a pile of those. They were introduced into the lake, but there hasn't been any added into the lake in a long, long time.
Yeah, I was fascinated when Joe got into all of the history and lake quality and all the things that you have to think about with this lake and what impacts the lake, and
And he was very, very knowledgeable about that, with his years of working at the hatchery.
Yeah. So when you get a booking, what's your favorite thing to do?
If it's summertime, and the up lake thing, it really is. I mean, that's it brings back to so many memories of doing stuff with my father and my grandfather up there and friends.
Yeah.
And I just get really, in fact, I always kind of apologize to people if we're down here fishing, and I always tell them, hey, this is an option if you get back in Chelan in the summertime, and if you have the opportunity, and especially if you've never been in Upper Lake Chelan before, I say you haven't seen Lake Chelan if you've not seen the Upper Lake. I mean, Chelan has its Chelan-Manson area, Lower Lake has its benefits and things and activities to do in year-round, but more so in the summertime. But I say, imagine getting away from that crowd completely. We might go for hours and never see another person. And you're going to see, you're going to see this transition from a shrub steppe habitat into an alpine habitat. You're going to see peaks, to 9,000 feet. You're going to see a glacier at a distance. It's just a completely different world, and you need to experience that. And I've never taken anyone up there that maybe I kind of talked them into it. No one has ever said, "Wow, I wish we'd never done that."
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, you're so good at it. I mean, you just know everything about it, and it's fun. So, speaking of fishing and hunting, when did you start? When did you know that being an avid hunter was going to be in your DNA?
Probably like 5-6 years old with a pellet gun or a BB gun, and I did not get in trouble with it mostly.
I did.
Down at I was, again, back to my grandfather, so I had a built-in place to learn with it in the orchard, and Grandpa said, "Okay, you can shoot starlings," and there was some other bird that was nasty on fruit, and there was nothing illegal about it. We won't go too far into that.
Yeah,
but,
I was gonna say.
And I think there's still some kids that maybe they're not kids anymore, but that have jobs doing a little harassment in cherry orchards too. Maybe it doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah, 12 gauge works pretty well.
It does. But yeah, so that was the beginning of that, and hunting with both my dad and my grandfather to start with, and more upland bird and waterfowl hunting with my dad with his hip issues he had from just lingering college football days, and it eventually ended up with 5 complete hip replacements.
Wow.
But and hats off to my dad. I mean, he made every effort possible to get me in the outdoors. I mean, I enjoyed high school sports, middle school sports, and all that, but my true passion was outdoors and hunting, fishing, even if it was just hiking around here. I mean, my dad was an avid golfer. As a little kid, he would I'd go with him. He'd go up to the golf course. And I remember when they built that golf course, and my uncle at the time, my mom's brother, who unfortunately passed away way too young at 37 from a heart issue, but he had a connection with a guy that was running one of the big D8 cats up there when they built that golf course, the community golf course. And I got to ride on the cat with him when they were building that course one day for a little while, and I still recall that. But Dad would take me up there then when I was young, and he would go to golf with his buddies and you know, old school names, you know, Barney Slogenhoff and Bob Engstrom, Inky as they called him, maybe Art Campbell and, you know, that crew. And Dad would turn me loose with a single shot 22 and a 50-cent box of ammo and say, be back to the club shed at 4 p.m. And so all those hills we're looking at out the window, I've always thought it would be funny to have a map of the lower lake and a red line of everywhere I've ever walked or ridden my little dirt bike or something. Yeah. And I think the whole thing would be red. But so that was some of the beginnings of that. But again, upland bird, waterfowl hunting a lot, and some deer hunting with him too. But he couldn't get out and walk miles and miles and miles. We did some hunting off the water. That was another fun one on the lake. You know, and those deer numbers have just tanked. I mean, we used to go up lake annually in the wintertime just to look at wildlife. Yeah. And an average number of deer we would count, and you can't see them all from the water, would be 300 to 400. I just did the trip again on January 1st, and I think we saw 15 deer. Wow. Now, granted, we don't have the snow, right. Yeah. But those deer are gone. You know, you can say what you want, but our predator numbers have exploded. I don't want to get on that soapbox too far. Yeah. But town deer, we don't have any shortage of town deer. No. You know, when you live down across the street from me, I can't keep them out of my garden.
Yeah, everywhere. They're in all the orchards. I mean, that's where they're at.
Well, they've learned that's where they're safe.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fruit not being picked, so there's a lot of fruit on the ground, and there's a, you know, all of a sudden there's a habitat there, and then you displace them, and now it's like they're walking around subdivisions and going, what's up?
They don't know how to be what I call real deer and live up on the hillside and eat bushes. But so yeah, with my dad that way, my grandfather more big game hunting, even though I did some upland bird hunting with him too, but I got to go, can't get out of here without telling a little bit about elk camp with Grandpa. And I used to go on a couple of scouting trips in the summertime with my grandfather and his brother, who were the first two guys, I'm pretty certain, that hunted the Clockham herd in the Nanum Basin. They built their own horse pack trail over the top of Mission Ridge and down into the other side, from the Wenatchee side. And they used to go in the summertime and pack grain and feed in there and some of their camp supplies. And their old, what we now call horse camp, which is not accessible by a road, not even close. I can still find the remnants of that. There's still a piece of their old wood stove there. I have a couple of the pieces that I picked up and brought home to keep. But so I think they started going in there as near as we could figure, 1939. Wow. So I've been hunting some of that ground since I was about 13 years old, almost every year. Not every year, recently though, almost every year.
So are you bow hunting that? Or are you?
So now primarily archery. Yeah, I gun hunted with them, of course, back then. Hardly anybody. I wish I had known more about archery hunting back then. But anyway, I started that. So the first time though that because you had to skip a week of school to go to elk camp with the family. And so I was probably about 13-ish or so, and I told Mom, well, Grandpa said I could go to elk camp this year, like for the hunt, you know, carry a gun and everything.
That's a rite of passage right there.
And she's like, you're not skipping a week of school. So I told that to Grandpa, and he goes, we're going to come up with a plan. And so the plan was, and it worked like a charm, and it becomes quite humorous, actually. And so Grandpa would have been, so let's see, if I was 13, he was exactly 50 years older than me, so he would have been 63, 64 years old. And so I went to Mom with big puppy eyes and said, you know, Mom, I mean, Grandpa, elk camp's a big deal with the family, and what if something happens to Grandpa and I don't ever get to go?
Sympathy, there you go.
And it worked like a charm. And then when I was like, you know, 25 years old, 10, 12 years later, we're still going in there and doing that.
That's
it's like
awesome.
That plan worked pretty good.
Yes. Yeah. So he went in a long time.
Long time. And then they ended up moving to camp because they built roads in there and did some logging down lower in the basin, and they ended up making what we called car camp, which now with the road closures, which is a good thing, you can't drive to anymore, so we have to camp down in the bottom. But we're both kind of, and it's a lot of that now has been with my close friend Mike Loomis, Bob's younger brother. I don't know if you've ever met Mike.
I don't know, I don't think so.
He's just 2 years younger than us, and so he and I got the archery bug, and actually I got introduced to archery hunting elk with my buddy Lenny that I brought up as the retired guide, and he and I did a lot of trips together in Idaho, and actually he and I and Bob and a couple other guys that you would know that aren't local, we did a horse pack trip into the Gospel Hump Wilderness. I know you've spent time in Idaho. Have you ever been in the Gospel Hump?
I've always done the Frank Church right in the Middle Fork.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is big country. I mean, look at it on maps. And at least Lenny told us at the time, his understanding was that was the largest roadless area left in the continental U.S.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about the Frank Church.
It's probably similar.
Yeah.
So we packed in with horses, and Bob and I were pretty new to that kind of country at that time, but we put miles on our feet like crazy. We didn't come home with an elk, but we had some encounters.
Yeah, they just changed that where we had to draw this year.
They didn't. The non-resident. I don't blame the people in Idaho.
Yeah.
If you show up in Idaho with Washington plates,
yeah,
you might want to find a fake Idaho plate to put on your rig while you're there. And I don't blame them. I mean, it's...
Yeah. Well, you know what happened, I think, because I've been going to the same place for off and on for 25 years. And I'm just addicted to it. In fact, I took Audie there this last year for a week.
I saw the photos. That was amazing.
Yeah.
She is like a little beast.
Yeah, she loved it. Now she knows it's cool. And I advise my friends that have never, if your wife or significant other is into it, she wasn't, hitting it hardcore like, I do after 20 times, but she now knows why I go. And now it's like not nearly as, it's like she gets it. She's like, that's so good for you to be alone and go deep. And I try to go really deep. I do a lot of solo hunting deep.
Sure.
And it can get wild. But she just appreciated it. It's so beautiful. And but what I was going to say is about technology, right? These YouTube podcasts.
Oh, I'm not a fan.
And when they start telling people exactly where they're at, exactly how they're, it's good in a way, I guess, but boy, it's gotten busy. And I could see why Idaho, to your point, residents are going, wait a minute. We got people coming from everywhere in the world now because they're seeing it on all the podcasts, and you get into that algorithm. And if you're looking, you start seeing some consistency with these fly to destinations that are kind of some of the last of its kind in the lower 48. But it's fun. I know I read where you go to Alaska, and I'm addicted to Alaska. I've only been able to go 2 or 3 times now. I did black bear a couple times, and I'm going blacktail this fall, and maybe put in for a black bear place. And that place is powerful.
Yeah,
gorgeous.
I haven't been there in a few years, but I got really lucky and had some great connections, and again with Bob and his uncle Gary and things, and got to do some incredible trips. But back up real quickly on the scouting thing and the electronics and the computers and the YouTube. Just boots on the ground. Mike and I, we were just laughing about this the other day. We did a scouting trip. We took 2 of the kids with us when our kids were little. We hit 5 states in 3 days.
Wow.
And we had made phone calls for 2 months. Getting appointments with bios and people with Fish and Wildlife, and we stopped into the office, we talked, and we took paper maps, we put notes on the maps, we went out and we walked these places. We put the work in, and now you could do the same thing in an hour and a half one evening on your computer. To me it seems kind of not fair.
Yeah.
But it's...
Yeah. The one thing that I do still see is that you get a lot, like at these airstrips in the Middle Fork. I fly out of Cascade a lot, or McCall, but there's a lot of people that land at the runway. And it used to be where the deer would be down, right pretty close. You wouldn't have to go that far. But now it's just going deeper. And once you go deeper, you lose 90% of the people, right? It's too steep, and you have to be prepared. You can get in trouble up there. The weather changes so fast. And so it's still cool. It's just now I'm going 10 miles in instead of 4 or 5 miles in. And that just takes more time. But
it's the same kind of thing, Mike and I found with where we're starting to think about it, like, if we kill something here.
Oh, it's tough.
But I just turned 64 and Mike's 62, but I think we both stay pretty darn active for our age. But we have been this one place that we've been hunting that I mentioned, some of this historical family ground. But we were getting up, and we were boots in the dirt, headed up the hill, making the grind 2 hours before sunrise.
For sure.
To be in a spot. But we're getting to a point, and that's because the road it still is a dead end where I set up my wall tent, which is a whole other thing. I still enjoy setting up the big canvas wall tent, and it's still elk camp. But to spend that much effort to get up there, and then we're looking at each other. It's September. It might be 80 degrees. If we kill something up here, how are we going to get it out in good shape? And we actually a couple of years ago.
Because it's so hot, you can't take multiple trips because it just get too hot.
And multiple trips in one day, we both went like, you know what, we could probably do it. and we'll probably not be able to walk the next day. But you and I have both been on some of those kind of packs that when I describe this, you'll know exactly what I'm saying. Is there hardly a better feeling than having 100+ pounds on your back and seeing the truck and dropping the tailgate and turning around backwards and dropping that pack on the tailgate.
I got in at 2. I got in about, it was about 1 a.m. after we shot a 6x6, and there was my two, my brother, my son-in-law, and my nephew, and they took a bunch of meat, and then I had the bigger rack, and by the time, and I was slower and young and older, and they were younger and faster, so I got in a couple hours after they did, but it was kind of neat because when I walked down, sometimes there's a lot of wolves there, and that's a weird feeling when you're surrounded by wolves and they're following you.
There's one that's better.
And you're like, whoa.
But yeah, Rick Hansen was on one of those packs with me, and this was what I was going to bring up. Thank you again, Rick. I still owe him 2 or 3 packs.
This is Rick Hansen, the electrician.
Yep.
And
we were high school classmates, and again, not one of those real forever friends. But we were in Idaho, and I shot a bull, and Rick happened to be unlucky to be in the vicinity, and I knocked the guts out, and we just cut it in half. And we each took, now granted it was a spike bull, it was not a mature 6, but still a big animal.
Still a big animal.
We cut that animal in half and put it on our backs, and we carried it to the truck uphill a couple thousand vertical.
Ooh.
I would not be doing that today.
Yeah.
But we were on our hands and knees to get out of up a cut bank the last 100 feet to the truck. But we've gotten smarter now. There's no reason to pack hide and bones. Those kind of packs.
Yeah, you learn. You learn when you do crazy stuff. But so you said you had hunted in Alaska and Africa. I was curious about what that was.
So the Alaska thing was first by far. I got to make a couple, I did a bunch of fishing, but kind of combination hunting. For one of these trips, though, I don't even think you could do it anymore today. If you could, the cost would be just astronomical. But I got to do a moose caribou hunt. Came home with one of each.
Nice.
Shoot all kinds of waterfowl because we were based on a river that we flew commercial to Anchorage. We flew commercial from Anchorage to King Salmon, and then a float plane to the camp. And the first time I did this hunt, we actually had, I shouldn't say we, but they had arranged for a 4-wheeler to be at camp. But the only way to get it there was to partially disassemble it and strap it onto the float of a beaver. And so then when we got there, then we took the 4-wheeler, and I was with I was by far the young buck in the group, and the older guys went, well, we heard you used to ride motorcycles a lot. And 4-wheel drive ones were fairly new then. I mean, this was back, to back that up and tie my wife into it, this was 10 days after we were married, and I left and went to Alaska for 2 weeks. And when some of those older guys on the trip heard that, they went, wow. I said, well, we might as well get it figured out right now. And thank you to my wife. She's always been super supportive.
She's a sweetheart.
Of
seems
all this
super
crazy
nice
stuff that I do. But anyway, so we get there, and what we did was we knew that there was a really good number of bulls, but they were up the river a little ways. And this river, they actually had an area they called the Braids, and it splits up into so many channels. So we're in small jet boats. So I'm running a jet boat with a 4-wheeler in the boat, and one other guy, and I don't know how many times you had to, you're up on step, you can't slow down, you're running in that much water. And so you got to keep going, and you've got to make a split-second decision. Do we take that channel? Do I take that channel? And sometimes the channel turned into a dry land. And a few times when we end up beached the thing, we'd get out, and there are literally brand new, fresh, in soft mud grizzly tracks. And that I should maybe tell the story of that one too. But anyway, so we found moose. Everybody shot a moose, nice bulls.
Wow.
And they would send me the ones that were accessible. They sent me with the 4-wheeler because the old guys had never ridden any of that kind of stuff. I say old, I mean, I was in my 20s then. These guys were in their 40s probably. So they would just flag it. There's no GPS, none of that those days. They would just ribbon a trail back to our camp on the river, and I would go out with the 4-wheeler and gather up the moose, and however many trips it took to get them back to our
That sounds
camp.
like a fantastic trip.
But yeah, and then we flew out to another place, and they dropped us on a little puddle in the flat area. This is, off of the Bering Sea area. And they dropped us at a little pond and said caribou are probably going to come through here sometime soon. And I'd never even seen one before. Wow. And sure enough, the next day, caribou all over the place. And so we I think we shot 3. There was 3 of us, and we all got a caribou.
And that's I've never done it, but you watch a lot of videos where they just come in herds.
And they always go with their nose into the wind. It keeps the bugs out of their face. They hardly ever stop. And there's bug. Oh, that's another thing with Alaska, the bugs.
Yeah.
In September, and there's a little one they call white socks, and it's a little bug with little white. It looks like white socks on
Yeah,
it.
what, you know, the little gnats that look like no-see-ums?
Yeah.
I got destroyed by no-see-ums in the fall. I thought they were just like our no-see-ums. No. All my arms, my hands turned like I was bitten by like the world's greatest mosquitoes.
It's like you had chicken
They're,
pox.
they're
almost.
just, yeah, they're just tiny little, like ours don't bite. Theirs have like jaws for teeth.
It's like those little white socks things. And when I get bit by one of those, I get a welt on my arm about the size of a half a walnut shell, and it lasts for a week or two. It doesn't just go away the next day. I mean, you would have to, if you were going to do your business, you know, out there in the bushes, as you're pulling your pants down, you better have a can of bug spray and be deliberately applying it on every square inch of exposed skin, or they will eat you alive.
Yeah.
But I recall when they dropped us off on that caribou, and I said I got to know the guy because I was into. In fact, I had just gotten my pilot's license, and so that's another thing people might know. I don't own an airplane.
Yeah.
I'm not current.
So when did you do that? What year?
Mid '80s.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I love flying. I'm lucky, you know. Now we're going down all these different paths.
It's called unscripted,
but
for a reason.
I've been really fortunate. I've got a close friend who actually learned to fly about the same time as me, and then when we both kind of, you know, families and kids, and got out of the airplane business. But good for him. He's in a position he can do airplanes, and he got the flying bug bad. And I think after about 6 or so years of being back into it, I think he's on airplane number 5 or 6.
Wow.
And so now he's decided I want to have one that flies high and fast and low and slow. And so every now and then he'll ring me up on the phone one morning if it's a nice weather day. And he'll say, "What are you doing today?" And I'll say, "I think I'm going flying." And he'll fly up. He lives down in Vancouver, and he'll fly up and grab me, and we'll go somewhere or buzz around.
You probably were, George Schultz was flying about that time.
Yeah, I didn't, you know, at the time I didn't know it. But yeah, then I found that out because then George and I, because Eric and I were, you know, we're close friends.
Yeah.
And our families did a lot of stuff together, Eric and Mary and their 2 kids. And yeah, I didn't know at the time that he
I just
was.
saw him at my dad's funeral. I was on 20, it was 5 years ago already, I guess. I go, "What are you up to, George?" He goes, "I think I'm going to start flying again." He goes, "What do I got to lose?" You know.
I think I don't know if he ever did. You know, he told me that he'd bought a small airplane and had somebody up in Brewster that was going to, you know, be an instructor and get him back into it. I don't know if he really did or not.
He's such a good man.
Oh, absolutely.
Marilyn was the queen when my mom was a princess.
Okay.
They were best friends in 1956.
She was such a sweetie. When I found out that her middle name was Joy, I thought, perfect.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, she was.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those women were just amazing people. And Eric and I shot my first deer with Eric.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what year do you think he graduated?
He's 82.
So he's 5 years older than I was, and we did it. You know, we went up above where Chelan Valley Heights is now, so kind of above their place.
Oh, yeah.
But we drove up and then we hiked down to their place
Yep.
above the football field.
Yep.
And I'll never forget it. I was like 12 maybe, and so he must have been 17. And we go up we see these 300s looking out over the Columbia, and he's looking, and you know, he's pretty excited, and I'm like new to the whole thing, you know. And we see 2 deer standing there, and all I hear is Eric goes, "Horns," and then I look at mine and I can't see horns, and I go, "What should I do?" And he looked over and he goes, "Shoot it." So I shoot it, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" The whole time.
Not that one, the other one.
They both dropped, and these guys turned around like right behind them, and I get up there, and I was so scared that I shot a doe because I never saw the horns. And Eric told me, I just did what Eric told me to do, and then lucked out. We shot 2 little bucks. And
I've helped a lot of young kids. I shouldn't say a lot, but a number of young kids, my friends' kids, because I've had them in hunter ed class. That's another thing. So Rick and Rick, thank you very much. Rick is so good at it. This is a little bit of a joke, but it's because Rick's the chief instructor, so he has to do the paperwork. Although I think he has enlisted Brianne to help somewhat with that.
You still doing that?
Yeah, this year's 30 years that we've been doing that. We, in fact,
That's cool.
little plug for it, if somebody wants to get in, we've got another traditional class, we call it. We do the classroom type class. We don't do the online thing. But so we have another class coming up. It starts Monday, March 30th, and we do it, thankfully, Shannon at the Wildlife Museum has actually built a classroom in that building. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's
so
incredible.
we get to teach the class in there, and you know, of course, you know, young people and old as well. That then they get to see all that. It's
Yeah, I
just
was going to ask you because I think it is an assumption that it's for brand new, you know, younger people, but I think it's a
Anybody.
great class for anybody, even if you've been hunting a while and maybe didn't have the official training, there's a lot to learn.
And it's primarily, we try to typically, we're not going to teach you how per se to hunt. It's geared towards firearm safety is the primary focus. But there's a lot of other stuff that gets mixed in, and a little bit of a survival training thing, a little bit of first aid. We usually try to bring in some other people, and we always have a lot of people that maybe they're more of an expert at something than us. If we can find an EMT or a paramedic or something to do,
And that's a prerequisite now for
anyone born after January 1. I think it's 1972 has to take the class.
Yeah, so that'd be a great gift. Your grandma and grandpa's out there for anybody, or take it yourself. How would you find out about you? How would you get hold of it?
So to register, go on the WDFW website, go into you got to dig through a few pages, of course, and get onto the Hunter Education website, and then look for there's the course schedule, and then you'll see Chelan listed, and it'll say traditional. So there is an option. You can do a bunch of it online, and then you have to attend a one-day, they call it field skills evaluation. Well, Rick and I did that once or twice, and for the right people, it works great. But what we saw, and maybe we should give it another shot, I don't know, we're just kind of old school, we do the in-class, hands-on training. But there's an online version that you do, and then all you do is this one-day thing. But what we found was that at least the time that we did it, or maybe we did it twice, this is quite a while ago, we had some young kids show up, and it was obvious that mom or dad did the online training, because they didn't even know which end of the gun went bang.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it's pretty important stuff to know. And what we were taught when we first took our pre-service training, I think they called it, to become instructors. One of the things that when we sign the thing that says you've passed the course, or check the box, it says you've passed, whether you've passed the written part or not, but that you've passed the evaluation from your instructors, then we should feel strong enough that we would feel comfortable with them with a loaded firearm walking behind us through the woods. And every now and then there's a kid that you can just tell, because and there's no age limit. Some states have age limits. There's no age limit, but the course is generally designed at the lower end for maybe an average 12-year-old as far as the comprehension and the reading parts.
How long does the class, how long does it last?
So the traditional one is 5 evenings for about 2 hours. Sometimes we finish up a little early. So it's Monday through Friday, and then we go up to the gun club up Washington Creek, and then they get to shoot 22s and a 20 gauge shotgun, and then we do a written test. And I walk them through a field course where they get to show me, this is the day, this isn't teaching, this is you show us what you've learned today. And so they show me how to cross a fence safely, how to come through a gate safely, how to walk side by side, where is your safe zone of fire, the area you can safely shoot.
That's great. I had 30 years, huh?
Yeah, well, the funny part is Rick and
crazy.
I started that when our kids were little. There was no one here teaching at the time. So, okay, we probably ought to do it. And we both were like, well, we'll do this a few years, and then some other parents will get involved. Well, here we are. But we do have a couple of younger guys that are getting into it now and helping. Good. And I hadn't heard from Rick that he'd scheduled our next class. We were doing 2 a year. We're kind of just doing 1 a year now. But I hadn't heard until recently we had another class scheduled, and then I was laughing when he called me and said, yeah, we got a class starting March 30th. I said, well, I thought maybe we'd retired, and I just didn't know it yet. But no, we're still going at it.
That's awesome. Cool. And back to, I want to make sure people can get a hold of you on your fishing.
Sure.
What's your website now for your fishing?
LakeChelanAdventures.com.
LakeChelanAdventures.com. That's great.
So, talking about fishing, I do want you to share the story about the little fishing adventure where you got hit by lightning.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah, not everybody can say that.
I don't want to drop the whole story, but I want to know.
This is one of those, okay, he couldn't have made that one up kind of stories.
Yeah.
I was in lab school in Seattle, but and me fitting in on Capitol Hill was not. It was not like a meshing kind of thing.
Not really.
And it's not as. So you remember when they had that? What do they call that? That occupation of part of Seattle that was at that Cal Anderson Park.
Yeah.
When I was going through lab school at noon, we used to play sandlot baseball there. So that's how much it has changed.
Yeah.
But even then, I was not a good fit for Seattle. And so I would look for anything anywhere close by on an after-school day or a weekend that I wasn't going down to fish in Southwest Washington or coming home to Chelan, place to go do something. So I found this little spot on the Tolt River, a small little stream that ran into the Snow Colony. And there was just a small handful of steelhead in there. I seldom ever caught one, but I could get out and fish. And there was usually no one else there. And so I was there fishing one day in the summer, and a thunderstorm popped up in the distance. And you know how they tell you, if you can hear it, you're close enough to be hit. And so in the distance is a big black cloud and thunder and lightning. But I mean, it's at a distance, I thought. And I could see a steelhead laying in the water in front of me, and I'm casting. And anyone that's drift fishing for steelhead knows that they're not necessarily going to grab your bait or your lure the first trip. It might take 10 casts, it might take 30, they might not ever grab it. But you got to keep at it. And so I'm casting and I'm casting and I'm casting. And the cloud's getting closer and closer and closer, and the fish is still there. And like I'm standing in water up to about my knees. And the next thing that I saw was a bolt of lightning that appeared that it looked like it was 20 feet wide. And
Wide,
and the sound,
not long, wide.
Wide.
Wow.
And the sound was the most deafening sound I've ever heard in my life, and it was the brightest flash of light I've ever seen in my life. And the next thing that I knew consciously was I was laying on the riverbank on dry ground 20 feet out of the water with no wet tracks between the water and where I was laying. And my fishing rod was 10 or 15 feet away. It wasn't broken, thank you. And it was and I was solo, I was by myself, there was no one in sight. And it was a few minutes before I could stand up. And I eventually got to my hands and knees and got on my feet and kind of staggered over and got my rod. And I did at least at that point think I'm probably done fishing for today. But got in my truck and was able to drive back to my little apartment that I lived in. I was by myself in a little studio apartment. But the next day, and for probably the next several days, I was so sore. I mean, every muscle in my body, from the top of my head to my toes, felt like I had pulled a muscle. Like, that muscle soreness after doubles of football practice the first couple of days when you didn't do the preseason training that you should have done?
Of course.
It was like that, but 5 times worse.
So did you get burned, or did you get concussion, or?
So I at the time I spoke to a couple medical people, and eventually I spoke to another person. Actually, recently I had a physician on the boat. I think he was a neurosurgeon or something. And they said you were either struck or it hit in the water right beside you, and what it did was it causes every muscle fiber in your body to basically go into a Superman pulsing mode, like boom, one time, because that shock made your muscle fibers contract or whatever they do that your nervous system uses, but it was like supercharged. And so they said basically it bounced you bounced yourself, you jumped 20 or 30 feet.
Jeez.
But you luckily, and just randomly, I landed out of the water, because if I had landed into the water, I would have drowned. I was unconscious. And I don't think I was out very long. But,
But it doesn't take long.
Probably a few minutes. But yeah, eventually the soreness went away. But back to, was I struck or was it in the water? This surgeon I talked to recently, he said, probably didn't hit you directly if you didn't have a burn mark in there.
Yeah.
But he says you got the same effect.
Yeah. And where was your boat? Do you remember? Was your boat still out there?
I think he was in the water.
No, I was wading.
Oh, you're wading.
Wade fishing.
Oh, I
I was just standing in water up to my
Yeah.
knees.
I see.
Yeah, my truck was just parked 100 yards
It's
away.
amazing that you don't get blind from that, because it is like so bright, so quick, and like right in your face.
I think a lot of things could have happened, but it was back to that rather be lucky than good.
So did you ever, after that, you hear people that get hit, sometimes get hit a lot. Like there's been stories, guys getting hit 6, 7 times.
Yeah, do you like
mean,
for
I've had-
sure
I've had
leave
I've had
situations?
some, well, you've been in a thunderstorm in the mountains probably.
Oh, yeah, tons.
And how loud it is.
Yeah.
And I had a situation, two the same time. I was into another hobby that I'm not doing anymore really, but hiking, climbing kind of stuff and mountaineering stuff. I was at a base camp. We were going to do a climb on Mount Baker. And I was sleeping in the front seat of my truck at a trailhead waiting, because we were going to leave at daylight to go set up, next camp up on the glacier. And a big lightning storm came through, and same thing, a big bolt of lightning hit in a tree in front of me, maybe 100 feet, and it definitely snapped the tree in half. And then during the climb, another storm blew through, and lightning was hitting on the glacier and blowing chunks of ice in the air. And I recall that you could feel, and we were old school, we're an old, Celtic pack frame, aluminum pack frame, and you could feel the static, like your hair kind of standing up kind of thing, standing on that glacier. We took shelter in a shallow crevasse for a while, just to try to avoid. And I've also heard, and I've done this a couple of times, been out on the water when a lightning storm came through, and if it looks like it's going to get close, we're probably going to pull gear and go to the shoreline.
Yeah, that's real deal.
I would, but
I have a healthy respect for lightning.
You lucked out.
yeah. And you don't need a second encounter. That's the beautiful thing.
And drowning and rafting trips with Bob when we're wearing a fishing vest, that our PFD consisted of a fishing vest full of lead.
Ew.
We had an experience when we were in high school on the Medhow River, where we're lucky we're both here. And we took a raft out. We had zero experience whatsoever with navigating whitewater. And of course we did it when the river was at almost flood stage. And we're in high school, and each of us had borrowed our dad's truck. So we staged the trucks and put in, I think by Gold Creek, if I recall, and we're heading down the river and fishing and being really stupid. And I think they call it a pillow, I learned afterwards, so that if the water goes over a big boulder with some water over the top, well, when it goes off, and you can't really see off the backside, but when it goes off the backside, it's creating basically a washing machine. And Bob was in front of me. I was in the upstream part of the raft, and it was not a very big raft, and it was not made for that kind of water. And it went over the thing, and it folded backwards in half, and Bob went underwater, and then I came in on top of him, and all of our stuff is flooding out of the raft, and I see the soles of Bob's shoe at about the surface level, and he may tell the story differently. This is what happened. And
Hear that, Bob?
I got that Bob, and I got a hold of his belt and pulled him up, and he was sputtering, and I'm sure both of our eyes were about this big around. And the adrenaline kicked in, and the raft's completely flooded, and so we're trying to get off of this rock that's pulling us back. And so we're pushing with the paddle, and he's paddling. We're both, we just have little hand oars, and we finally got off of that rock, and we went for shore like we were an outboard motor in that thing.
Jeez.
And it wasn't 100 yards down the river that it went, into a big set of rapids. And we did that nervous laugh when we got out of the water, because we're thankful we didn't just die.
You almost died, but then it probably saved your life, because you probably would have died.
I got a lot more healthy respect for moving water after that.
And I talk about this with my kids too, about how, and my daughter now have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old grandsons, and how when we all look back at our childhood, we all have, because we really didn't have any supervision really in that time. Everybody kind of said, get out of the house and come back at dark or whatever. So we got in trouble a lot, or we did things like that weren't, in hindsight,
probably the best idea.
Not the best idea, but I think that forges critical thinking. That gives you a problem solving if you survive.
Yeah, I was going to say if you survive, which it sounds like you've survived at least 12 different things in your life.
There's more, I think we were talking earlier, I've had a few friends over the years say, you really ought to consider turning your button down just a notch or two. And I'm sure that I have, being a little bit older, but there's a bazillion of those stories. I should probably tell where we at time frame?
We're good.
So, you were talking about wolves howling. So I had one with a grizzly bear that was interesting. Archery hunting for elk in Montana.
Yeah.
And I was with my buddy Lenny that I mentioned, and we were up at about 8,000 feet. So of course the biggest tree is that big around. It's Alpine type stuff. And I was hunting solo, but we were in the same vicinity. And this was actually my first bull archery. And so I had called this bull, and it was amazing. And it doesn't work like that anymore. But I watched him come from 800 yards away to a cow call. And it was when you watch the YouTube videos, like, well, anybody can do that. They just come running to you. It doesn't work that way. But this one time it did. And this bull came right to me and stood. I had made myself a little blind. I'm giving away a little secret here. So find a fir tree with limbs to the ground and carry a little handsaw and cut a handful of limbs off right above ground level, and then stick them in the ground like a picket fence in front of you, and you've got a perfect little blind.
Yeah.
And so I'm in my little blind there, and when the elk got within a couple, 300 yards, I ducked right into it and just kept quietly cow calling. And this bull came right in front of me. You couldn't have scripted it better, and stood perfectly broadside at 35 yards. And so, of course, he's looking around, where is the girl that I hear? And so I drew and released an arrow, and full pass, I heard it thunk, and just under the spine. So this is that part of if you're offended with hunting stories, turn the thing down. But full pass, arrow went out the other side. He didn't even barely flinch. It's kind of a no man. Archery-wise, with a gun, it would have been over with. But with an arrow, there's really nothing there. So the vital organs sagged down a little bit below the spine, and all I really did was poke a hole through the hide and out the other side. It would have never been a lethal wound at all. And so he turned and just started to walk away, and he's looking. So I quickly knocked another arrow, all excited, went to full draw, and I had the little cow call in my mouth. I cow called again. He came back and stood in the exact same place. Pointed the other direction, but broadside.
He was thinking
and
girls.
I went, well, last time that was a little high. I need to be about there. Clunk, double lung shot, and he went 100 yards and was dead. And so I'm solo. It's 15 minutes before dark now, because I've been hunting all day. And
dangerous in Montana.
And up at 8,000 feet in Montana, and no handheld radios at that time that would reach any kind of distance. And so I, field dress, got the animal. It's going to be below freezing that night. no problem at all to leave it out. I knocked the hide off, I rolled him over on his back, I got him up on a couple of little logs like this, best I could, good airflow, perfect, great shape to leave an animal. And I had been warned, hey, there are grizz in this part of Montana, and so just be aware. And so I hadn't seen one. I had seen a couple tracks, but I had not seen one. And I had to go downhill mile and a half to hit a primitive dirt road where I was going to meet up with my friends. We'd prearranged this is where we're going to meet, and if all goes south, be there sometime during the night, whatever you got to do. So I step into this meadow, and there's a full moon, and you've had these times where it's like, I'm probably never going to forget this scene. Full moon, I step into this meadow, it's light, dry grass, I'm at 8,000 feet, and when the sun went down, bulls started bugling everywhere around me. I had no idea there were that many bulls in the vicinity. Because they weren't silent during the day, but they were not nearly that vocal.
It's an orchestra at that. Yeah, it turns into an orchestra.
Oh, it was. They were everywhere
crazy
around me. But when I stepped into that meadow, I looked across the meadow, maybe 50, 75 yards, and the meadow was maybe a couple hundred yards long. And I looked across, it's like, man, that is a big stump. And then I started, there's no stump. The biggest tree up here is this big around. And the stump had a hump on its shoulder. And there's enough light with the moonlight, and that it was like, that's a bear and that's a grizz. And he's doing this.
Yeah, he's smelling it.
He or she. I'm covered in elk scent, elk blood, I have 2 arrows, and I have, this is a few years ago, more than a few years ago. I've got a little mini mag, flashlight and I'm trying like this and compact binos, and I'm trying to get a look at him, and it's definitely a grizz. And so as I'm walking down the meadow, he just paralleled me, he or she.
Scary.
And the meadow's gonna get narrower and narrower, and no charging, no standing on hind legs, just following and sniffing, trying to decide, do I want to eat this or not? Well, at some point I have to walk, so it's going to get back into the thick timber to get to the road. I have to get to the road. There's not there. I mean, I'm not going to sit here all night long. So basically, I stepped into the trees, and the bear went into the trees, over there. And I thought, he's either going to get me or he's not. And I just tried to focus on going to the road. There was nothing I could do. And never saw the bear again that night. We went back the next morning with my 2 friends. There was 3 of us to pack the meat out, and with pack frames and stuff, and approached that very carefully. Nothing there, no problem. Bear hadn't come and claimed it or anything. Okay, great. So we made up 3 packs, and we could get everything in 3 packs except the rib cage, and everything meat was in great shape because it was still wasn't even above freezing, I think, that next morning. And the one guy that had a cabin in the area, my buddy and I, Lenny, we had to leave that next day, and the season was right to the end anyway. He says, I'm going to come back the next day and get the rib cage and bring it out, and he was going to make, do ribs with it and stuff. And so I got a phone call after I got home the next day or 2, and he says, here's what it was. He says, I went back to get the rib cage that next day, and he said, the tree, so what we did is we cut some limbs off of one of those Alpine trees, and as high as we could reach, we hung it on a little stub, the 2 pieces of the rib cage, like Fred Flintstone rib cage. And he said, when I got there, the hide was gone, the guts were gone, the grass where the blood was, where you gutted that animal, was licked clean. The rib cage was gone, and there were claw marks about that far apart down the tree where he had grabbed that and ripped it out of the tree. So the story goes even a little further. So that fall, they did a big write-up about the increase in attacks and encounters between archery hunters and grizzly bear in Montana, and they happened to write a story about this little tiny drainage, and I'm not going to say the name of the drainage, but it's right where I was at, and I understand that mature grizzly bears are a little bit territorial, and they have an area, and he or she the only one there. That exact same place, a month after I was there in archery season, a month later during gun season, a hunter was charged by a grizzly bear, and he shot and killed it at 10 feet. Wow. Probably the same bear.
Yeah, they have a real challenge in some of these, like Wyoming and Montana, where they've just protected them to a point where there's
too many.
There's too many. And then in rifle season, and they do this in Alaska too, they talk about it.
They come to the sound of
yeah, it's the dinner bell when they hear a gunshot. Oh, nice. And they don't have any predators. So basically, if you're not controlling the population, they're the apex species, and they're like.
And we want to throw them in. Do we want to get started on that one?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
We want to introduce them up above Stehekin. They're not going to stay up there eating bushes. They're going to come to town and eat Carl's goats.
Yeah, and I think the problem that a lot of people that are really sensitive to that whole killing animals in general, they don't realize that no predators, no control. It's not good for them. It's not good for the people. And then they bring in the government, and then the government will go in and kill, just make it up, go kill 100. Whether it's wolves or whether it's, grizzly. I don't know if they've done that with grizzlies yet, but eventually they could contract killings to thin the herd a little bit because there's just too many rather than manage it. So it's confusing, and I think that's driven by ideology more than it is in politics.
Well, and I go back to something that we talk about in the hunter ed class. There's conservation. That means the wise use of a resource. I would, like the wolf thing, I would feel a lot different about that if we had been down to where wolves were actually threatened or endangered. Well, we weren't anywhere near that whatsoever. It's just that we didn't have them down here in the lower 48 in big numbers. And now,
they're everywhere.
They're here. Whether you want to believe it or not, there are established wolf packs on both sides of the lake.
100%.
You'd be amazed if you knew how close to town they were.
Yeah, I know those places, and I
they're
know
here.
It's wild how many there are. And in fact, just happened to a friend of mine in Manson.
And cats, cougars. Growing up here, if you knew somebody that had seen a cougar in the wild once, that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
And we had the hound hunting. In fact, that's another hunting story. I was super lucky. I drew one of the very limited hound permit numbers, 2010, the last year we could use hounds to hunt cougars in Washington. And that was I'm so glad I got to have that experience. Yeah. It's only been once. I'd love to do it again. But anybody that thinks that, all you did was turn a bunch of dogs loose and jump out of the truck and shoot them out of a tree. No. It was 4 days of following those hounds from daylight till sometimes well after dark. That was another funny one. They can put GPS collars on the dogs to help locate the dogs.
Right.
And we couldn't find one of the dogs, and the guy that I was with, he pulls this thing out and he's looking at it. He goes, well, the dog's doing about 40 miles an hour down such and such highway right now. And then a few minutes later he goes, and he zooms in, he goes, they're at the drive-thru at McDonald's right now. What happened was somebody saw the dog and thought it was loose, and they picked it up, and so the collar was reading while it was in the car. And then they felt sorry for it, and they took it to McDonald's and bought it a burger.
Got it a burger.
But those dogs just live to hunt. They just love that. But what an experience to get to do that. That was. The neat thing about the hound hunting is, which they've taken away, you could be incredibly selective. No harm, no foul. You ran the cat up a tree. Okay, maybe you hurt the cat's feelings for a few minutes. You pull if you go, we don't want to harvest a female, or we don't want this one or that, or you can walk away. And you get to make that decision. And now if you just catch a glimpse of one and you want a cat and the season's still open, they have way small quotas. If you don't take the chance, you're not going to get another chance probably. If people knew how many cats, I know a local guy that's got a whole bunch of cameras up around, and he says, I see them in the city limits. Well, my neighbors, where we live, my neighbors right across the street a couple of summers ago sent me a still shot of an image from their security camera of a cougar walking by my mailbox in front of the front door in the middle of the day.
Yeah, we talked about the deer too. I had a 4-point about 2 months ago now in my office. Would walk around my office because we planted some shrubs, I
thought you said in.
No, not in the office, but like around my office building, and big giant 4-point.
You should talk about the one where you just survived the deer that was coming straight onto you.
My neighbor called me this summer, and he says, "Are you at home right now?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, go look out your kitchen window." He goes, "There's a 4-point standing beside your deck." It walked across the deck. My concern is they come on our deck too, and you'll be sitting in front of our computer, and you get that feeling something's looking at me. And you look up, there's a deer looking in the window 3 feet away. Yeah. I'm concerned that during the rut one day, one of those bucks is going to see his reflection in the window.
Charge through your.
That's going to be bad.
Well, don't have clean windows.
This happened last week. I was in Manson, right in town in Manson, on a listing that we're working on, and we got there. I let my German short hair out in my truck, and he's just running around. And I look over and I see.
And there's an orchard right next, just a small
orchard. It's right in town.
Used orchard.
So there's 3 or 4 deer sitting there, a couple bucks and a couple doe just sitting on these rocks. And I was like, oh, there's some more deer.
Enjoying those snow.
And so we're all together. There's 2 guys, and they created like goalposts, and I'm right here.
And I like the description.
And I look up, and there's this deer, this doe, big full-grown doe, running Mach 6 straight at me. And it was from 50 feet away, but it was full speed. And I'm like, when I just locked onto its eyes, and I just go, that deer went right next to me. I mean, Wood ran me over, and I was like, "What in the hell?" And then right behind it, my dog's chasing it. I was like, "What are you?" Well, I thought suicide deer. What is happening here? Kamikaze pilot. But yeah,
we've all had some. I had a
crazy.
calf elk this year when I was archery hunting. And I think I know. I'm pretty sure I know what happened. I actually felt a little bad for the little guy, but and I know it was a bull calf too, because when it peed standing beside me, that was pretty evident that it was a bull calf and not a cow calf. But I cow called, and that little dude answered me from a couple 300 yards away, and ran to within 8 feet of me and stood there for 5 minutes and stared at me.
Yeah, no, I've had all kinds of experience. In fact, one of our neighbors when I was living up by you, Gary Shively.
Yeah.
When we were younger.
Another one of our old goats up there. He's younger than me though.
Yeah, we were watching up at the firing line, is what they call it in the clock.
Oh yeah.
Back. And there were so many people, and I ended up I stopped rifle hunting up there, but we were all this fog was down, and there was like a huge herd in there, and you could just, as the fog was lifting, there was hunters all around. There was just so many people. We were behind a log, and finally the fog lifted to where they had to make a decision, because now they have no cover.
You gotta go somewhere.
So the whole herd just took off right at us, and I was kind of down behind the log, and I saw Gary, and you'll remember this, Gary, and he's just like kind of got locked, mesmerized on this whole herd. The whole herd was running directly at us. I grabbed him by the chest.
You might want to get
I pulled
down.
him down over behind the log next to me, and they jumped right over us.
Wow.
Hitting that log, and I was like, but you got to get out there to get all these fun experiences.
You've seen that.
And survive them.
Yeah, you've seen that. Speaking of jumping over the log, you've seen those where you're like, okay, this is a historical game trail. You see those hoof drag marks across the log with the scratches.
Yeah, I lived it. It was good. Well, man, this is fun. We've been going for an hour and 40 minutes or something. I got one more thing. We're going to call this you
have to, okay, you got to give me one more 3-minute story.
Whatever you want.
Okay, this is too good to not tell. Like, I didn't even go to the notes. We could have gone crazy. This is the
We'll have to do a round 2.
This is the slug story. So
the slug story?
Slug story. So kid story. Growing up in Chelan, kid story.
Yeah.
So Bob and Mike Loomis, their names have come up a lot today, are spending the night with me. Mike's 2 years younger than Bob and I. So we're probably, I would say, 8 and 10 years old-ish, 7 and 9 maybe. My sister was 3 years, is 3 years older than me. So we're having this sleepover. Well, we're all upstairs in the house. The 2 bedrooms are upstairs in our house. Mom and Dad are downstairs. And my sister has, and I think it was Karen Goulet. I said it might have been Marie. Bob said, I'm pretty sure it was Karen. And so, and they're 13, 14-year-old girls. And so to put this all in perspective. Mm-hmm. So first of all, it's probably a bad idea for the 3 of us boys to be allowed to be having it all together with the girls there at the same time. So we concocted an idea. I think it might have been me that came up with it to begin with. And then Bob and Mike were, we're all in. We went out at about midnight, 1 a.m. and collected slugs off the sidewalk. You know how like you irrigate at night and the slugs come out on your sidewalk.
Yeah.
So we had handfuls of slugs.
Ew.
Live, big, gooey, slimy.
Put
Yeah,
salt. You used to put salt on
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh, are we allowed to say that?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
the
I know.
70s.
Or magnifying glass on ants.
Yeah, 70s.
Yeah. So we've got these. We might have put them in a soup can or something. Anyway, we've got slugs. So as quietly as possible, we sneak into the girls' room. They're sound asleep. We start placing slugs on the girls, and they're not.
I
waking
would
up.
have
No, this gets
murdered
better.
you.
This gets so. We put them on their face.
Like leeches.
Oh, I would have murdered you.
We actually got them on both of their faces, leaving that slimy trail crawling, and got out of the room before they woke up. And when they woke up and discovered, you have never heard a young teenage girl scream like that in
Wow.
your life.
I got demons on my face.
I would have.
And of course,
oh
my mom
gosh.
came just bombing up the stairs, thinking, what on earth, something really bad has happened. And it didn't take long for her to figure out. And she was a little angry, to say the least, with us young boys. Mm-hmm. And I still recall her telling Bob and Mike, would you like me to call your father? And if anybody knew, as we called him, Big Bob.
Big Bob.
At 1 a.m., him getting a phone call from my mom of what we had just done and that he needed to come pick them up. Mike was crying. Bob was just shaking a lot, I think.
Scary.
And thankfully, Mom did not call him.
Did the girls get you back?
I'm
the
sure.
revenge had been so
those
good.
Those girls, they deserved everything they got at that age. Because when you had a little brother 3 years younger, you got picked on a lot.
Oh.
That's how you flirt with girls when you're 10, 8.
You put slugs on them.
Yeah, that's how you say you
I
like
could
them.
not tell the slug story.
I love it.
No, but we still like giggle and get tears come out of our eyes laughing talking about that.
That's just terrible.
That's awesome. All right, we're going to do one more thing.
Right.
We joke around because, the vibe seller question of the day. We got the Frontline Real Estate Company help sponsor this, our real estate brand. So pick one of those, and we'll just see where we end up. Let's pick
Lucky left.
one card. Here we go.
What am I supposed to do?
Read it and answer the question. What
You
is
would
the
make
question?
him do the work?
Yeah. I'm a lazy realtor.
Family. What's something good that happened in your life recently? My mom getting that new hip.
Yeah.
And some good things for my son too. He's been through some rough times younger in his life, but he's made some phenomenal changes and got himself in a lot better position.
Oh,
Good.
that's cool.
That's gratitude, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Mark, to get to know
Enjoyed
you
it.
just a little bit better.
Yes,
And
thank
Nice meeting you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
It's like, it's funny that I made a
quarter
I
of your
didn't even
stories.
need to make any of these.
Yeah.
Well, you probably talked
didn't-
about a lot.
Yeah, we could have gotten. I'm sure I missed all kinds of fun stuff. We could do two more.
We can do another one. I'm gonna have to get the other guys. See what we want to do is cross-reference your stories.
Yeah.
You
I
got-
think that's what will have to happen next.
If you got Bob and I and Mike together, or just Bob and I even, but it might go like way off the tracks.
That's okay.
There might have to be like a PG-13.
We'll just put a disclaimer in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Like you said, you got to do like a PG-13 warning at the beginning.
Yeah,
A little intro.
exactly.
All right. Well, I guess that's it.
Okay.
Signing off. Small Towns Unscripted. One more time.